Hey, everybody, welcome to Breakfast All Day. Matt, Christy, Alonzo.
Hello.
I had a professional engagement the night of the one Gemini Man screening in Los Angeles, so I didn't get to see it, even though I did previously punish my eyes with the 120 frames per second of Billy Lynn's long halftime walk.
So many frames. All the frames.
All the
in my
frames.
eyeballs at once.
So y'all tell me about this one.
Oh my God, Gemini Man. You should do it.
All right, so Gemini Man is the story of this assassin sniper played by Will Smith, who is slowing down a little bit. He thinks it's time to retire, has trouble looking himself in the mirror because he doesn't really particularly feel great about what he does. And the kind of counterintelligence, Defense Department, shadowy cabal government thing that he works for is not particularly happy, so they decide to send someone after him, even though he's the best that's ever been.
Because he's Will Smith, of
Will
course. He can be mediocre at
and
anything.
He is amazing. But Clive Owen assures everyone that he's got the perfect guy. And if you've seen the trailers, you know that the perfect guy is the younger version of Mr. Will Smith.
Because clone parents don't understand.
Right. And insanity ensues.
Yikes. So what's really confusing about this to me, first of all, Ang Lee directed this. And I so appreciate that, after all these years, Ang Lee is continually and consistently trying new technology. I like the trying. I like the instinct behind the trying. I like the ambition of it. But what ends up happening more and more with these films, between After Life of Pi and then Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk and now this, it's like he's got this idea in his head that the higher frame rate is better, that it's a preferable viewing experience, and that it's a more, crisp and accessible and immediate storytelling device. And it does quite the opposite, actually. It's so distractingly sharp. It is sharper than real life. And it's uncomfortable. It's unpleasurable. It's distracting for a long time. If you guys saw Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, there's something that's happening here where the average film speed is 24 frames per second, right? He's doing this in 120. Okay. So it's just super crammed
looks like
and
motion
sharp.
smoothing.
It does, and it makes the
crisper.
lighting on everything look like flat and hot and bright.
Yeah, it makes everything look like B-roll.
It's weird, and I don't know why he keeps thinking that this is preferable, because it's not.
do we think, and I've not seen this movie, but in terms of, in the larger sense of this, do we think that he is investing in the future? Does he think that technology is that a whole generation of kids are going to grow up and that's what they're going to think movies and TV look like?
Because they've watched them on TV first?
Well,
Maybe.
because
And they're used to motion smoothing?
It's interesting.
The technology keeps changing. So is he sort of putting in a bid to be ahead of the curve that is inevitable, or is this crazy?
I don't know. Good question.
My take a little bit on this, I actually got used to it after a little while. And previously, some of these movies that have the higher frame rate have bugged me. And the complaint you hear from a lot of people is it looks like video, right?
Yeah.
And partly because broadcast video is already at a higher frame rate than film, right? And so when people say it looks like soap operas, it's because the movement is, if not cleaner, it's a different experience. Not that there's a lot of soaps still on, but it does move at a higher frame rate. But some of the previous things, and this was particularly, I thought, an issue with the first Hobbit movie, is that the effects and the makeup and the sets don't quite catch up to the high def frame rate.
So it looks obviously fake. And I think in a few years, it'll get better in a few years, but in that few years since The Hobbit, I actually think that there's been some strides made. And after a little bit, the higher frame rate actually added something for me. In what instances in the
film?
film?
So, for instance, the first big chase scene between Will Smith and the guy who's been sent to kill him, as, especially the explosion in that courtyard, that felt very immersive to me. And there's a lot of that it definitely felt immersive. And if that's what he's going for, I felt like I was there in a way that a lot of films, and particularly movies with shaky cam, don't do. Now, there are some shaky cam moments in this, which I think that's a mistake. I think one of the other problems that gets used fairly often is when there are pans that happen.
It's weird.
It's weird because your eyes don't track that way, right?
Right.
People's eyes don't pan. They dart. And I think using a traditional pan or even, putting it on a rail and dollying the camera around, I think is a mistake with that level of frame rate. I think you need to more mimic how somebody looks at something. But when it works, and I think, especially like the chase scene on the motorcycle, that kind of worked for me.
The chase scene on the motorcycle was pretty cool.
Right. Now, there's some moments where I thought, starting to look a little like CGI, and I think that's one of the other problems
Do you think being a gamer though has attuned your eyes in a
no,
way?
I actually I don't think so, because the higher frame rate games I have a bigger problem with, and I think a lot of the CGI in games and a lot of the cutscenes and stuff, like it's you get into that uncanny valley, and this movie doesn't really do that. But there are a couple of times that, especially there's a final fight scene between three people, and one of them is very, very much feels like it was inserted CGI, and that movement doesn't feel as kind of present as, say, some of the others within the film do. And I think kind of what I was saying earlier is the higher frame rate is going to make everybody else in the film, every other craft is going to have to up its game to catch up with that level of detail that it shows. That being said, this worked for me in kind of the immediacy and the feeling of it. There are some shots that I think are ill-advised, and it doesn't help that the story is really dumb.
It's so stupid. We should mention really fast who all wrote this, because you're going to be just staggered when you hear it. David Benioff.
Oh, wow.
Creator of Game of Thrones. Billy Ray, who wrote like Captain Phillips, a veteran screenwriter.
Sorry, I have to interrupt. Benioff, adapter of Game of Thrones.
Okay, but still, like of the series, when you watch the credit,
showrunner,
it says created by David Benioff and some other dude.
It's an adaptation.
I'm
of the
sorry.
series
He didn't make up the dragons. The dragons were already there. And then also Darren Lemke, who wrote Shazam and Turbo. So I don't know whether is it like a Too Many Cooks thing. I don't know, but it's a really stupid story. I agree. Basically, and it's also just an incredibly heavy-handed metaphor for Will Smith. In middle age.
How does youngified Will Smith look?
Doughy and false. Like I wanted to stick a finger in his Play-Doh face.
Well, when we watch The Irishman, we can compare and contrast.
The thing is, though, we've seen good youngification.
Sure.
Right? Like young Kurt Russell in the beginning of the second Guardians.
Yeah.
Or
young Michael Douglas in the first Ant-Man.
This movie does a better job, though, and this is something that I think is most glaring in Captain Marvel, in that Will Smith can move well enough and they're smart enough about the way you see. They either sometimes are, there's some places where it seems pretty obvious that they are inserting the youngified Will Smith onto a stunt double's body. But for the most part, Will Smith doesn't yet move like an old man. He still has, you still believe that he can run. Whereas there's certain scenes that you watch Sam Jackson running along with Brie Larson and Captain Marvel, and he kind of does that hop that a 60-something-year-old dude will do. And I think that's one of the things that is getting missed with the youngification, is that people don't move the same way. And I think we're leaving out, that's a little bit what CGI animators bring to the table is there's a different style of movement, right? It's great to take somebody's wrinkles out, but they still they're not as spry as they used to be.
Well, yeah, I think again, just touching on Irishman real quick, I didn't read the article, but there was a headline about how they had posture coaches.
Oh.
Because De Niro and Pacino were playing the version of themselves at one point that's 20, 30 years younger. So they had to have somebody sort of show them how to...
Not to hunch over like an old man.
How awesome would it be to be on set telling De Niro to stand up straight?
Shoulders back, mister.
Exactly.
So
come on, Bobby, stand up straight.
So the whole thing is that he's got as is totally standard bread and butter for so many spy movies, whatever, assassin movies, he realizes that he can't necessarily trust the people that he thought he could trust, and he goes on the run with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who has been sent to monitor him, but she's a Fed in disguise. It's not a spoiler. And she goes on the run with him, and then Russell Wong.
No, wait.
Hold on. Damn it.
From
Right.
Doctor Strange.
From Doctor
Benedict.
Strange.
Benedict
Wong, the other Benedict. Yes. He is also a part of the equation too. And it's like really silly, zany globetrotting. And wherever they go, there is ridiculously gratuitous product placement. So our good friend Katie Walsh did a whole ranking of
beverages.
the various beverages. It's so distracting because it's like, it's this guy on a yacht, this super wealthy guy who is a former associate of Will Smith's, has this beautiful yacht. And he opens up the refrigerator and pulls out 2 Budweisers. Like, I don't think that's what he'd be drinking. This guy would be drinking Budweiser. And then there's like Coke, real Coke, like placed like strategically right in the middle of the frame, like it's a commercial
those
for
movies aren't
Coke.
going to pay for themselves.
and I'm sure again that's where the 120 really comes into like thing, because my recollection of Billy Lynn was it makes everything look like behind the scenes B-roll, that was shot on a much crappier camera where it's all just like too clean and, like you said, too flatly lit. But yeah, then also be shoving labels in our face. Come on,
You can't help but see them. And there's a whole scene where like Will Smith and Mary Elizabeth Winstead are
just
eating.
imagine in 3D.
No, God, they're eating something.
It wasn't 3D.
It wasn't 3D.
It wasn't 3D.
And it was in
brother.
those reclining seats where you feel everything.
Oh,
and there's
brother.
so much gunfire in this movie. And then there's one scene where this giant van explodes.
Right.
like you're
the
gonna
first
get
time there's
like,
an
busted
explosion
out
in
of
the
your seat.
movie and the seats start rumbling and we're just like,
We're
what's going
laughing.
on?
Like, I don't know that that's necessarily preferable. Like, I'm not sure I need to
Yeah,
feel
I
it in my
mean,
butt when there's a van explosion.
If they're gonna put you in those seats, then like the Budweiser should come out of the armrest. Like, do it upright.
Exactly.
But Will Smith and Mary Elizabeth Winstead are like eating some snacks they found on a boat. They're eating on a beach. And like, you can count the individual caviar eggs on the cracker that she's
Yeah,
eating.
I'm okay with that.
Are you okay with
I
that?
was okay with that.
I found that distracting and weird.
There's moments in this, I think Smith for the most part puts in a solid performance. He's playing, he's not until the very end of the movie, he's not the wisecracking Will Smith that we're expecting. He's, this is a guy who's serious about his craft and relatively laconic and doesn't waste words, and he'll immediately put Winstead in, okay, here's what I need you to do. You're going to do that, and I'm going to do this, and treats her like a professional, which I was kind of impressed with. And so the way the movie kind of portrays his craft is solid. But it starts to get into this cloning thing that turns into like when Clive Owen starts monologuing, you're like, oh God.
Please don't
here
explain
we go.
your thinking.
Like this
Clive
could have been an
Owen.
otherwise interesting, tight movie, but it just kind of goes off the rails the more you find out what Clive Owen's character is doing. And he's trying to do, and Owen, God love him, is trying to do the best with his part. And he always delivers, reliable performances. It's fun to see him he's not quite scenery chewing, but he's clearly having fun being the bad guy. But, by the time the script gets into the second and third act, it's just dumb.
Well, it wants to do a couple of things simultaneously, right? It wants to be a big, dumb, noisy, escapist popcorn picture, but it also wants to dabble in, heavier, weightier ethical questions of cloning. And what if we had an entire army of clones? Not that that's the most novel concept in the world. It's not. It's been the basis of like a million sci-fi and thrillers.
Right.
But it doesn't really do either of those particularly well. And then the frame rate situation hurts it even further. If this were a normal movie, if this were just a traditionally shot film, it would be fine. But the whole technological element of it makes it bad.
I don't know. I
would
think the tech actually in this particular case helps it a bit for me, at least. It made, like, once I adjusted to it, it made the action a little bit, again, more present for me.
Mm-hmm. So you liked it.
More than you, certainly.
You enjoyed, actually not that much more if we look at our numbers. Because I will agree, some of the action sequences are a lot of fun. Yeah, the motorcycle chase in Cartagena is a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
Right, and the big set piece in the town at the end, like I think that's well done. I think that's well staged, and again, it all felt, it was immersive in a way that I think a lot of times it takes a really, really strong director and cinematographer and fight choreographer to do. And I think that in this case, the higher frame rate and the 3D kind of added to all that.
And Mary Elizabeth Winstead is always good. Like,
I
they're
think she's
all
great.
always good.
Yeah.
Like, they're doing the best they can with some really dopey material. I'm saying 5.
I'm saying 5.5.
Right,
so-
it's not that different.
Yeah, not that different.
It's just not. It's just not good.
Right.
So 5.3 is our number. It's at 28% on the
No, it's not
tomato
that
meter.
bad.
It's been dropping. It keeps dropping. Will you catch up with it, Alonzo?
I'm going to try to. I want to torture myself with the full frame rate just to see what Ang Lee is even thinking, because part of me thinks, is he just like so three-dimensional chessing this that he's just getting us to like 2050 when all TV and all movies look like this, or is this bonkers? Like, because even with Billy Lynn, I remember thinking, you know, it's a movie about a guy who is dealing with flashbacks and PTSD from the Iraq War. And I thought, if the flashbacks were in this crispy vision and the rest weren't, then that would be really cool. And it would be this interesting sort of glimpse inside of his mind. But since everything is shot that way and everything looks like garbage, it just didn't work for me at all. Dave walked out. He couldn't deal with it. And he said the guy, there were only 2 theaters in America that even showed it that way. You know?
Well, that's going to be the case here too.
Yeah, there's only like 10, I think, that are even showing it in the way that Ang Lee wants people to see it. But Dave walked out and he went to the concession stand, and the concession guy was like, "Oh yeah, we've had at least one walkout of every screening we've had."
Because it's just like queasy making. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
Well, yeah. So this entire conversation we're having is going to be like mostly moot for the vast majority of our listeners and viewers, because they're going to see it the normal way.
Yeah.
So why did he go to all the trouble if only like the ArcLight in LA and like, I don't know, where is it playing in New
Lincoln Center,
York?
I don't know.
Wherever. Yeah, that
That's a good
they had
question.
the capacity to show it that way.
Like, it's not easy being a pioneer.
I know. All right. Thank you, Ang Lee, for trying. We appreciate you.
And thank you for watching. Please like this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at BeFastAllDay. And check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. We do extra goodie stuff for our subscribers. We're currently taking votes on what horror movie we should be reviewing this month that's streaming. We're also talking about showtimes on Becoming a God in Central Florida, which is getting crazy. And we'll be doing HBO's Watchmen very soon. Also trailers and movie news and other stuff. So check that out. If you're already a subscriber, thank you very much. We super appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.